So what I figured I would do is first I'm going to introduce so Lucy and Riley, and I don't see Obina yet. I think he said he was going to hop on at 9. We are the entrepreneurship team at the Rioux Institute. Lucy and Riley joined us about 2 weeks ago, guys.
3 weeks now. 3 weeks.
3 weeks as innovation associates, which I'll talk through what that role is, but it's really a 1-year role designed on engaging recent graduates or early career professionals in all the programs we're doing here. It's a 1-year program designed to either retain people like Riley, who's a Maine native, or attract people like Lucy, who will be officially moving here Friday, I believe, next Friday, and get her in and injected across the state. And then Obina oversees our community and ecosystem programs, who will be hopping on in a few minutes, who also just moved here from New Jersey about a month ago. So our institute, if I'm sure you've all heard of it at this point, but really what it comes down to is there's 3 core missions, and I'm going to give you the short version, not the formal marketing version, which is really how do we revitalize kind of economic growth across the state and help across 3 core things that we do: academics, research, and entrepreneurship. So those 3 things are really designed at how do we support the businesses that are here. Traditionally, the majority of our businesses are the larger business. How do we get them the talent pipelines they need? How do we do academic research with them to further their businesses, the WEXs, the IDEXs, the Jackson Labs of the world? The second is how do we attract more businesses here? And examples of that is basically putting a talent pool here that will attract companies into the region. We're having active conversations. We have a few folks on our team whose job actually is to go around the country and convince people to put either satellite offices or pieces of their teams in Maine, whether that's here in Portland, whether that's in other regions, does not really matter to us. It's how do we pull people into the state, which was very core to Dave and Barb's mission when they made the initial gift to create this institution. And then the third bucket is building new businesses, which is really where our team comes in. And the original charge that I was given when I kind of came into this role is my career has been in technology startups, but my father growing up ran a general contracting business, so kind of saw both sides of it. And I told this to Ann on our first conversation. The original directive was really just high growth, high tech businesses. But what I am very confident of is you cannot do that without maintaining the main streets and small businesses that actually support and make it attractive for these companies to move here. So when we look at the entrepreneurship team, there's 3 core things that we focus on. One is high growth venture creation and acceleration. So over the next 3 years, our mission is to attract, start, or invest in 60 high growth companies. And to us, high growth company is technology based with a mission of growing from 0 to 100 employees within 5 years. So those are high growth, high tech technology businesses. The second is we have talent programs, which is designed on how do we engage and help people get the talent they need to grow these companies. And that also includes a program that we just started pilot, which is the Innovation Associate, where Lucy and Riley will actually spend about 50 to 60% of their time with the programs that we are talking about today, but also 30 to 40% of their time working with either our partners running programs around the state, working with our portfolio companies, the startups that we are working with hand in hand, or we've even started to say, like, is there a way that we bring our whole team up to one of the main streets for a time period? Obviously right now it's easy because we'll do it all virtually, but future case when this program starts to scale and we have maybe 5, 10, or 20 of these associates, we can kind of distribute them around the state. And then the third piece is our community ecosystem development piece, which is really where we are trying to figure out who the right partners around the state are to help bring the resources of Northeastern to help whatever their mission and program is. And that's how I originally reached out to Ann, because in that bucket, we focus on how do we build an inclusive environment to attract founders that are traditionally underrepresented across the country. Second, how do we support the small businesses and small communities that make it attractive for the high growth companies to move here? And then the third is really just about building a thriving ecosystem and partnering with people like Startup Maine and other organizations to make sure that the ecosystem's here. So when we kind of started thinking through how do we support small businesses, we said, what can we really do here? We aren't able as a team of 5 to get across the entire state. So who are good partners that we can act as a liaison also back to the global Northeastern network. So one of the core things is, yes, the Rioux Institute operates pretty much independently, but we are part of the Northeastern University Global Network. Northeastern has, I'm going to be in trouble, I think it's 11 campuses, it might be 12 now, across the world. That includes London, Toronto, Vancouver, San Francisco, and we get access to all of those resources and even things like the Center for Small and Family Business, which is run out of our Boston campus. So we can tap into programs, resources, professors, and corporate partners even to say, how can we pull them into regions and programs that make sense? And our kind of hope here was, before we go out and build something, talk to the people that are, day to day working with all these businesses. And I heard the end of David's kind of piece there on takeout, and my in-laws are in Owl's Head. So if you get pickup in Rockland, I will tell them to go pick it up tomorrow. So the real hopes here is, we've had a few concepts based on some of the feedback we've had with Anne. We can run, short workshops. We can pull in subject matter experts on digitization, on, digital marketing. We can bring in our Center for, what is it? Blanking on now, but the College of Arts, Media, and Design actually has something on visual representation. So I know one of the things that people had mentioned to Anne was storefront design and things like that. We could probably pull together a team of 20 to 30 or 40 undergrads that want to do a project for a set of businesses. And then one of the big concepts we had, and I'm going to throw it out here and you can all tell me if it's a terrible idea or a great idea, is putting together some sort of content library, whether it's right now, obviously via Zoom, to run, 3, 4, 5 quick modules on a core business topic, whether that's marketing, whether it's, digitizing your finances, whether it's cash flow, and trying to work with some of our corporate partners to actually say, hey, let's make it so the small businesses don't have to pay for that. And then second, if they do complete it, put some sort of kind of carrot at the end, right? I have 2 friends who own a few restaurants in Boston. I was like, what would get you to do this? And they're like, honestly, I'm busy running my business day to day. If there's not something at the end, whether that's the chance to apply for a grant, whether that's, a chance for us to get free services, that's what we need to put at the end. So what we have kind of been thinking about in theory is doing some sort of course like this, hopefully in partnership with your organization, if you're interested with it, where we put together that modular learning with office hours with maybe professors or, MBA students that will come in and do a little bit of help with those businesses, and then do some sort of competition or application for a grant at the end, where we give a grant out to one business in every one of the 16 counties there for X dollars, and then basically run a grand prize for all that for maybe a $10,000, $25,000 grant for one of the businesses across those 16. That said, we could totally do that 5 segment learning on marketing. We could do it on website building. Like, there's so many different pieces, but you guys are all obviously working with these businesses day to day and know what those pieces are. And we'd love to hear from you what might resonate. If I said anything there that is a great idea or a terrible idea, we're iterating on this in real time. And then if you have any other ideas, this team really, and Obina has joined us now, Obina's here as well, is really focused on how do we integrate the best of Northeastern with the best of what's already here in Maine. And, you are all clearly doing incredible work across all these towns. And how do we put those 2 things together to make a 1 + 1 = 5 output?
Great, that's exciting to hear. I see hands going up and people thinking, let me see, Delilah, did you just take yourself off mute? Yes, Delilah.
I can, yes.
Oh, only if you want to.
Yeah, is it all right if I offer a thought?
Please.
Okay. It was great to hear about all those resources, and also I totally agree that you do have to figure out incentives or what would be the incentive for people to participate, and your idea was at the end. But the other biggest incentive that I haven't really ever thought of before this moment is how important networking, like hearing from and sharing ideas with others in your cohort is. And so I think folks that I've been working with in businesses have not been very inclined to come to a 1-hour webinar on the thing I know they really need. But they might sign up to be part of a cohort group with restaurants that if
Oh, shoot, we lost
5
one.
of them are meeting. Oh, really? Can you
You
hear
said
me?
restaurants.
Yes, restaurants that have started up in the last 5 years. So 5 of those restaurants would meet together, and they'd not only get the content, but they'd be sharing with each other, and maybe even coming out with some kind of a report at the end, or yoga businesses across the state or something like that. Getting people together across the state, content sharing, but also networking and becoming kind of a cohort.
That's great. Thanks, Delilah. And Delilah is from Biddeford, Chris, just so you know. So if you guys are called on, will you just say what town you're from? I think it's helpful to Chris and his team. Thank you, Delilah. Anybody else want to give a little feedback to Chris? Dave.
Thanks. That's really, really helpful, Chris, to hear that. It sparked a couple of things based on conversations I'm having. So you mentioned, I guess you talked a little bit about accelerators. I mean, we're spending a lot of time here in the Mid-Coast region thinking about that. And just to give you an example, we're feeling like there's a real opportunity for media technology accelerators here in this region based on the talent we have. So any advice, or I guess if it makes sense to take it offline, that's fine. But like thinking about how these little mini accelerators can pop up. I mean, I'm thinking a lot in terms of this model of like that, what I saw with like Techstars and some of the other things that I experienced while I was in Boston, but trying to figure out how do we seed that in these regions? Because as these technologies have become cheaper, we're seeing opportunities, but we don't have these accelerators where we can kind of like, to your point, like speed up that process. And the other thing, I mean, Delilah touched on networking a little bit. I'm thinking about it in terms of like seed funding, right? So you mentioned Boston, but if you're thinking about a business in Boston, you have access to so much deal flow and like venture capital connections that we don't have here. And so when I'm talking to young people in my community that want to start businesses, the pool of money and investors who are interested in like doing an early stage investment is so small that it's really stifling our entrepreneurship community. And I keep referring them to resources in Boston and other markets, and then they're leaving and going to those markets. And I was on the phone with a AI legal SaaS startup in San Francisco talking about bringing their company to Rockland, and their biggest concern was just the lack of access to VCs and kind of just the deal flow as they try and raise a Series A. And so I think that's going to be something that's, if we're actually going to be successful with this, that's like, I think it's so important to just put on the table and say, how are we going to bring more of that? Because the VC early stage group is so small. I mean, imagine Mid-Coast. It's so small in Portland, let alone up here in the Mid-Coast as we're trying to like get these entrepreneurship kind of accelerators going and things like that. So I'm happy to talk more about it. I think maybe offline if that makes sense, but that's my biggest concern related to the things that you mentioned.
Yeah, and I would love to talk about that offline. Actually, the first software company I started, we went through Techstars back in 2013. I sit on their advisory board, and I started an accelerator and incubator at Northeastern about 15 years ago. So very familiar with that. And we also will be announcing a handful of things at the Institute here in the next few weeks. Actually, later today, we're announcing the first residency company. So part of that venture creation acceleration side, we will be doing a formal accelerator that's open to any business that wants to have a significant portion of their operations in Maine. They don't have to be a Northeastern or Rioux Institute related company. So we'll announce the first 6 companies in our residency program where we're co-locating people here, giving them office space and access to our global funding network. But I completely agree there's also the 2-track separation. And that's one thing that I have realized we probably need to be very mindful of in programming is say, okay, this is a program designed for this type of company versus that. And it's not that one's better than the other, but the needs of a restaurant and the needs of a software startup are polar opposites. And, so totally agree. And I'd love to chat about it.
To that point, I feel like we have a lot of investors in Maine who are used to investing in a certain kind of business So when we show a model or a pitch deck for a type of business that I'm working with, like some young entrepreneurs in my community, it's very, very hard for me to get investors to think about it from that mindset. So anything that you can do to bring even just that mindset of people to say, here's how you would invest in a SaaS startup that was started by entrepreneurs in the Mid-Coast region, even things like that would be helpful, because again, as we refer them to resources in Boston and Austin and San Francisco and New York, they're picking up their companies and they're going there because they feel like that's where the deal flow is.
We'll stand here closer to the border than the Mid-Coast and make sure they don't go any farther than Portland. That's our OB is working actually on an angel investing boot camp that we're working on, that we're going to run across the state with Silicon Valley Bank and a few other banks up here. So happy to chat on that.
Other comments, questions, thoughts? I can tell you, Chris, one thing, the Maine Community Foundation has been working with us and National Main Street Center and bringing their vice president who specializes in entrepreneurial ecosystem development in Main Streets. He's been working here in Maine in 3 communities. Unfortunately, none of them could be here today, but they the work is finding and the research is finding that place really matters. And I did hear you allude to place making and the importance of place. And I think in some of the rural communities, you have a lot of entrepreneurs, innovators, makers doing things right there already, is what some of the national research that's been being shared with us is showing. And that getting those people to the next level is because they've chosen to live there, right? They're right there in the backyard, in addition to attracting new. And I have an article that is written by Matt, who's been our consultant, that came out in the last month that I'll share with you, that talks about the importance of place and the people that are already there. So we're also, I think all of these communities see that as well.
No, and I actually had a long call. I don't know if you guys know Owen McCarthy from Med Rhythms. Owen grew up, forgot exactly, I think he's from northern rural Maine, and basically said, I went to Boston, started a company, came back here because this is where I wanted to be. We need to tell more of those stories.
Yeah.
So completely agree, the place piece, we need to also find those stories, shine light on them, and then keep them here.
Great. Amy.
Hi.
From Westbrook.
Yes. Thank you. Hi, Chris and team. Thanks. This is really interesting. I really liked what you said about one of your prongs about building an inclusive environment and supporting small businesses that may not have had an opportunity in the past, and how to create a thriving ecosystem. And I'm curious how you're exploring the role of childcare and how you bring businesses to Maine, and how you help to support women and parents specifically in becoming entrepreneurs. I think one thing that this pandemic has blown the top of is the critical need of childcare for any family. And because of it, just the way that the pandemic has unrolled, we stand to lose in Maine over 22,000 childcare slots, which is 48% of what we have. And I know in Southern Maine, childcare slots are infants. It can take 2 years to find an infant slot. And I know that there's a dearth of high quality early education programs up in other parts of Maine as well. And I'm just curious if you're exploring this as a means, because if you're bringing more businesses here, businesses mean families, and families mean children, and you can't start a business and you can't work at these big companies if there's nowhere safe to put your family.
I know that I was actually in Westbrook this morning dropping my son off, which is why I couldn't be here at 8:30, and faced the wait lists and all of that, and have done all of that. There's a few different pieces there. One, we are actively, and Lucy, Riley, and Obina are working on a bit of a listening tour right now with kind of those small businesses and organizations, supporting them to see, similar to this, how we can help them. The second is, we actually even have one of those companies that we're bringing to the residency is a software company that's actually trying to solve the childcare problem by basically building curriculum and online management systems to start and run home daycares and nanny shares and basically build out the business sides of those. So part of that was strategic because we have heard the same thing, right? Like childcare is an issue, right? That and also normally like the trailing spouse job, depending which one that is, right? Like we've heard and seen that also from our large corporate partners, right? Like people like WEX and IDEX are trying to get someone to move from Chicago and San Francisco or wherever to work. And questions like, where is my partner always going to work? So there's a couple layers to that. Maybe there is a track around that, like a support track on starting a childcare business. I don't know. Like this one company we're bringing in, they're actually only about 6 months old, and they're launching their pilots in southern Maine in, I think, the next 6 months. So we'll announce that again this afternoon. But it is, I think, both childcare and housing and affordable housing are both problems that are things that we will face for not just what we are doing at Roux, but the entire kind of state economic switch, right? Like, how do we get more people to come here? You need all those things. You need affordable places to live. You need places for, childcare. So I don't have a perfect answer for it now, but, Lucy, Riley, Obina are really doing listening tours like this. For time context, I joined the team here full time in October. Obina joined November. It's February, and then Lucy and Riley joined in February. So we are going as fast as we can on all these different points, but still in listening mode on a few. So if you guys have great ideas on that, we are happy to see what we can make happen.
Great. Just to call out a couple people who are here and may have additional layers. Catherine Wygett Fawcett is a new MDF board member and also the director of Maine's family-owned businesses. And I know I didn't say it right, Catherine. And
Institute for Family-Owned Business.
Thank you. And
IFOB.
Thank you. I'll remember that. And I also want to overlay Teresa Valier, because she is in a corner of Portland, Chris, that has, and Teresa, you know the statistic, one of the highest number of new Mainer owned businesses, right? And the highest number of foreign languages spoken in Woodford's Corner.
That was my question, if I could say something about it.
Please.
Thank you. So yeah, we're just we're an intersection that is now a Main Street affiliate. So we're not part of the downtown district, and the revitalization of downtown Portland's beautiful, but we're all the other middle-class residential that live out here. We have, just was adding it up. We have 20-something businesses, immigrant business, right within this 1 mile stretch that we're in, and probably represents, I think, 14 countries of origin. And these are mostly retail, like as in grocery stores, restaurant, food outlets, or a few services like auto mechanics, etc. And the services, how can we build something that's actually more meets the needs of these small businesses, which do not make the leap to next level technology, marketing, these kinds of things. And we can't provide all those services for them, but how do we, if Roux could help us develop or find ways to do this? This is what people tell us constantly. Like, they don't even know how to put their stuff on Google Maps. It's like, they don't have any kind of, marketing.
Great.
What's really interesting and exciting about that is that actually, so where Northeastern's located in Boston, neighbors Roxbury, which is one of the most diverse areas of Boston. We have a lot of programs that we run there that we are basically trying to figure out how do we translate those up here. Mm-hmm. One, for example, is our community business clinic that's run through our law school. And I'm in active conversations with the dean, and we're about to hire 1 or 2 folks from that to come up here. And they actually run open office hours for legal consulting for any business in the region, right? Like, that's what they do in Boston. Mm-hmm. We also have kind of started doing things like marketing projects, but I think the piece that you said there that's interesting to me is some of the really simple pieces, because of the investment that Northeastern as an institution has made in hybrid learning, right? Like, one of the small blessings of COVID is we've now got infrastructure on this campus. I'm here, we have our testing site on site, all of these, but all of our classrooms are wired for 2-way teaching. It's basically Zoom on steroids, which would allow us to run a workshop maybe here, but make it available to everyone, also record it and basically reuse that content. So I've been thinking about what can we do on our end as like a content library. Like if we run that, our head of enrollment here at the Rioux Institute spent a long time at Groupon from, I think, employee, she joined at 100 or 200 up until they were a few thousand employees and then back down the other side. But through that, she's like, we worked with small business all the time. And she's like, she even mentioned how to put your business on Google Maps. She's like, I can run a workshop on that in 20 minutes, how to optimize your Instagram ads. Like I ran a digital marketing software company before this. So like, there's some really lightweight stuff we can do with practitioners. And I also think that's going to be an important piece that I want. Actually, I have a hypothesis. So actually, if you all give me an up or down, it's like, I don't believe we can do these programs with all professors. It has to be a blend of part professor, but more other practitioners. And I've talked with a bunch of restaurateurs here in Portland. They're like, hey, like Andrew Volk, I don't know if you guys know Andrew from Huntington Alpine. Andrew's like, hey, I'll run something in partnership with a marketing professor to talk about like the theory versus like how I did it here. And I think that we probably need to do that blend, because otherwise it turns a lot into like, oh great, that's what some professor says. Like it's not, they don't know what it's like to really do this. Can
you guys give Chris a thumbs up or down on that?
I think I've got enough heads there. Okay, confirmed.
I think that's a thumbs up, yeah. Peer-to-peer, Amy says, peer-to-peer training and support is a really great, strong model. Yeah, I agree.
Hey, Chris, can I add something in terms of...
Oh, sure.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut someone off.
Oh, no, go ahead, Brian, and then I'll go to Cara.
One of my things that I learned working with entrepreneurs and new Mainers, many struggle with English comprehension, and there aren't many ESL instructors to educate. And the simple confidence level of going into meetings with a greater command of the language can make a huge difference in terms of businesses really having a degree of success. So again, just that type of level of support, marketing is great, e-commerce, etc. But just again, it's the basics, ESL support to get people more fluent.
Can I add one last piece to that? It's ESL support as well as interpretation services around businesses and contracts and things, because we have interns from the university that have helped businesses here, but they're the interns in marketing and media, and that's great, but we run into the language problem and you can see it in their face.
Right. Good point.
That they're uncomfortable. Also, I don't want to ask, it's a small place. I don't want to ask people to try to find interpreters without knowing cultural stuff matters, and people may not want to discuss their business or have an interpreter from the community. So interpreter services or access to that for complicated things, that somebody who's distant from the community but speaks the language.
Great point.
Hey, just a quick note to my internal team, because I don't want to forget this one. Can we just make a note to follow up with both the law school, because I know they have a thing there, but also look across Northeastern's resources to see what there might be.
Right.
There's definitely something, I just don't know what it is off the top of my head. And I think that's something that, in a weird way, the Boston campus being Boston is actually a better, the separation is one of those weird times where it's actually better for us, for that team to not be in Maine versus here.
Mm-hmm. Right. Cara had raised her hand from Ellsworth.
I have a sort of a question it's kind of specific, but Heart of Ellsworth is getting ready to start work on a feasibility study that aims to create a space in our downtown, filling a large vacant space that's been vacant since 2016. And the concept is a makerspace, co-working space, but the concept is actually larger than that. It's larger from the perspective that we've brought in the Maine Crafts Association, which is predominantly Portland and West Gardiner centric, and that if we find that we can support a makerspace in Down East Maine, that this would be the first one that would be a model for integrated and sort of maker spaces around the state that are affiliated with the Maine Crafts Association. So it would make it so that they have other spaces around the state that are not really being serviced, like because the MCA, Maine Crafts Association, is very Portland centric. We're trying to broaden their reach and to make them actually have brick and mortar in different spaces around the state so they can more easily serve their membership. We're getting ready to start this project within the next week. We have a lot of the needs for the feasibility study already figured out, and we have people partnered with them. But what we're looking for right now, the last spot that we don't have filled, is somebody who will help us write a business plan that would be one of the chapters of the feasibility study. And this whole thing is sort of perfect, because, unbeknownst to me prior to coming on today, but this is a service that we are in need of within the next month, I would say. And we're doing a series of 6 different sessions with the folks who are part of the feasibility study. And it would be wonderful if we had support from, I would imagine even an undergraduate student would be able to help us with something along these lines, but that's a very specific need for us at this moment in time.
Great. And I would say statewide, we have a number of communities that are working on the development of co-working spaces, commercial kitchens. A lot of it's happening through our entrepreneurial ecosystem work. And anyway, it's a hot topic. There are contacts at state DECD who are overseeing kind of a statewide network of co-working space owners and developers. So there's a lot in that topic. I don't know what Roux has to overlay on that, but certainly, Chris, it's not a conversation you and I have had, but there's a lot going on in Maine on that.
Yeah, and there's a few of these pieces, kind of similar to what Kara brought up, are definitely areas where it's tapping more into our resource network in Boston, because currently our student base here is all master's and PhD in computer science and bioinformatics and pieces like that. So that'll shift, and we're going to start launching some more programs on this, but I would say 70% of our students here are full-time working, pursuing master's and PhD in those pieces. But we have access to 30,000 plus undergraduates in Boston, plus another 20,000 graduate students there that also overlays over the business school. And there's a plenty of different ways to engage those. We also have co-op students. We have about 30 co-ops right now that are up here working for Maine-based employers, and believe, and don't quote me on this, I believe 60% of those are graduate students, but 40% are undergraduates from across Northeastern that have come here just for the 6-month work experience. The plan will be to continue to grow that over the next, few months and years to hundreds of students that we're bringing up here to engage with Maine-based employers. And then hopefully get them hooked and get them here after they graduate.